What you do in preparation for an open water swim can really have an impact on how successful your swim will be. I'm Michael Collins, and I've been coaching swimming and triathlons for over 20 years. This video will help teach you the necessary skills and techniques needed to compete to the best of your ability and enjoy open water swimming and triathlon competition. Section 1, Basic Swimming Skills. We're going to cover 3 main points in this area. First, being comfortable in the water. Second, swimming with low effort. And third, breathing techniques. Section 2, Course Evaluation and Safety. We're going to cover 4 areas here: water temperature, waves and currents, bottom conditions, and course layout. In Section 3, Advanced Open Water Skills, we're going to cover entries, navigation and sighting, drafting, turning around buoys, exits, and racing strategies. Before going to the ocean, it's important that you learn your basic swimming skills and build your confidence in a controlled environment. We're going to teach you how to be comfortable in the water, on your stomach, on your back, and on your side. All places you need to be in swimming.
Go.
Humans are not natural water creatures, so we have to learn how our bodies work in the water and develop a friendly relationship with the water instead of an adversarial one. If you are in a constant battle with the water, you will lose. You will become very fatigued very fast, and the frustration will only build as you find yourself expending a lot of energy and moving very slowly. By comparison, a good swimmer can move comfortably through the water at a quick pace, using very little effort, using the water as their friend.
Go.
Poor swimmers are always swimming uphill. Swimming uphill refers to the body position of the swimmer with their head much higher than their hips. This position causes many problems. First, the legs work much harder by kicking to try to keep the hips up. This can be extremely draining since the leg muscles are so large and use a tremendous amount of oxygen. Second, with the head held high, the arms are used mostly to push down rather than pull back. This not only keeps the head high, but does little for forward propulsion. This is why poor swimmers are always tired and slow. Most of their effort and energy is being expended into trying to stay on top of the water instead of moving forward. Let's look at this swimmer more carefully to see what we're talking about. Notice how you can see his head out of the water, but you don't see the hips. The body shape is somewhat like a banana, curved from the head towards the hips. This is the opposite of what we're looking for. We'd like a long, straight body line with the head mostly underwater. This helps keep the hips closer to the surface. Also notice the bubbles from the feet. They're working quite hard, but if you were to take away the arms, there would really be very little propulsion by just using the kick. Notice the difference in a good swimmer, how the legs don't have to work much at all. You'll see the legs staying close to the surface and just kicking to help the weight shift of the body from side to side. It's critical to get comfortable with your head in the water, nose down, looking at the bottom. The head and hips should stay at the same level as much as possible. So how do you stay horizontal? Press on your buoy, or your lungs, or your chest. This is the lightest part of your body. By pushing into the water with your chest while maintaining a straight spine line, your hips will naturally raise to the surface without having to rely on a strong kick for body position. Full stroke swimming involves many intricate details that are hard to learn all at once. So we break the stroke down into smaller segments we call drills. We're going to show you some of our favorite drills by doing things correctly and incorrectly to see the difference in what the effect is on your body. Notice how this good swimmer weight shifts from hip to hip and moves the arms and the hips at the same speed. This is core-based swimming. This is the most powerful way to swim. The hands are not moving faster than the weight shifts from one side to the other. Weight shift, weight shift, weight shift from side to side, shoulder width apart. By comparison, watch this poor swimmer, how the head's mostly out of the water and the hips are not rotating to match the arm stroke. So the arms are essentially dragging the body through the water. See how much more bubbles and splash you notice. Head high means the arms have to push down fast and they get ahead of the hips. The hips and the arms are not moving at the same speed. This is a much more draining stroke. In this drill, balancing on the stomach, notice how the head, the back, and the hips are all at the same level with the nose looking down. Every time the head comes up, the hips go down. There's a sinking feeling. Then when there's pressure on the chest and head, the hips return back to the surface. Same thing happens when you're swimming. When the head comes up, the hips go down, the body stalls. So by learning how to control this in drills, you can learn how to adjust it in your own swimming to keep your head in the water more. Head up, hips go down. Head down, the hips rise back to the surface. There should be a small sliver of the back of the head, the shoulders, and the butt cheeks all touching the surface. That's a nice, straight, balanced body line. Now let's take that to swimming. Trying to apply that same principle of pressing on the head and the chest helps keep the hips close to the surface when you're swimming. This is a great way to incorporate drills. Do the drill as a few 25s of practice and then apply it to your swimming. This is balance on the back. Lengthening the spine line, the chin's tucked a little bit to make the back nice and straight. Now look what happens when you get to a bad position. Lifting the head a little bit or releasing pressure on the buoy causes the hips to sink substantially. Even though the kick stays the same, notice where the hips go as the head lifts up. They drop towards the bottom like a rock. So pressure always needs to be on the buoy and the back of the head without arching your back. This is a very good recovery position if you're in open water and need some extra air or to clear or fix your goggles. This is called side balance, rolling to the side to make the arm dry. This is a harder place to balance because you have less support from the water when you're on your side. Nose up for air, barely any of your head out of the water, and then nose down to see if you're going straight. Trying to keep the spine as straight as possible. Biggest tendency of error here is to arch your back and tilt the head to try to get the air. When you're doing this right, the arm is pretty dry on top. Nose down directly on the side, nose up a little bit towards your back. This next drill is with an arm extending the body line. An arm out in front of your buoy helps lengthen your boat and make you travel with less energy output. Nose up for air, nose down to see if you're going straight. This position I call freeze frame freestyle because it's kind of that position you want to get to in every stroke in your swimming, even though it's just for a moment. It's not a position we hold when we swim, we just go to it for one brief moment. Balancing on our side is much more difficult than on our stomach, so this is why we practice it by just doing it as a drill. Nose up for air, nose down to see if you're going straight. Notice how the eyes are never looking forward. The head stays on the spine line. Slow motion swimming. Swimming at very easy speeds, maintaining body balance, is a great way to burn into muscle memory how to do things correctly. If you're not balanced, you'll feel rushed to take the next stroke. If you have good posture and balance, you'll be able to swim as fast or as easily as you like. Good swimmers don't make much splash. They don't make much noise. They look quiet and comfortable in the water, even though they're not traveling at very slow speeds. Learn to do these drills on each side, since being fluid in the water requires you to swim more on your side than on your stomach. The goal is to learn to breathe by rolling your body to air instead of lifting your head to air. Once you can kick comfortably on each side, try swimming very slowly and easily, focusing on skating down the pool on each hip rather than plowing through the water with low hips. Breathing is another important issue in swimming. Breathing every third stroke helps develop a symmetrical swimming pattern. Breathing every third stroke sometimes is not often enough for the output during racing. So breathing just to one side is a good option, but you should be able to do it to either side. Let's say, for example, that you're swimming in tough conditions with lots of wave, chop, sun, and maybe even other people hitting you. If you don't have the ability to breathe on both sides, then you're going to have a huge disadvantage and are in for a very frustrating swim. So try that. Swim down the pool breathing only to the right, breathing every stroke to the right, and then come back breathing every stroke just to the left side. Is the stroke count the same? Counting strokes is another excellent way to gauge how efficient you're becoming. In a 25-yard pool, an efficient swimmer takes less than 20 strokes to get across. If you're in a 25-meter pool, you can add 2 strokes to that count. For a 50-meter pool, that same swimmer would take less than 45 strokes to get across. Taking your pulse after swimming a few lengths is a great way to see if you are working too hard. If you take your pulse for 10 seconds, it should be between 18 and 20 beats if you're staying in a comfortable zone. This will allow you to maintain your pace and technique for a longer period of time. When you can keep your body in a more horizontal position, swim on your side more than on your stomach, and keep your stroke count and pace consistent for several hundred yards, you should have the confidence and basic swimming skills necessary to get out and swim comfortably in open water. Before entering the water for an open water event or training session, it's essential that you first evaluate the course. You should go through a checklist of safety items. Don't act foolish by putting yourself in a potentially dangerous situation if the conditions are beyond your ability level. Know when to say when. Often you will learn far more by just staying on the beach and learning from others' mistakes. And wouldn't you rather go home to your family instead of making a trip to the hospital? The most basic of things we're going to want you to do first is to find out water temperature. This will help you decide how much warm-up is necessary and if a wetsuit or wetsuit cap is needed. Your best bet is to ask a lifeguard and then confirm it with several people. If the temperature is below your personal limit, then a wetsuit is usually recommended. Each person has their own temperature limit of when they know they can't sustain technique, where it starts to all fall apart. For some, that might be 70 degrees. For some, that might be 65. It's hard to know what that number is until you've explored with it a little bit. If the water is cold and below your comfort zone, you may become mildly hypothermic, which will cause you to be somewhat disoriented, not think straight, and your stroke mechanics will break down. It's important to know that this can happen to you and to try to be out of the water before you get to this stage. The next thing you want to do is check out the conditions such as waves, currents, wind chop, water clarity. All of these have an effect on what your swim will be like. Just surveying the conditions can help you understand it better while you're dry and can see straight, as opposed to when you're in the water with your goggles on and maybe even foggy. So check things out ahead of time, and then when you get in, evaluate the conditions some more. Check the bottom to see if it's hard or if there's rocks on the bottom or not. You're going to want to know that if it's a race and you're going to have to be running in or out of the water. In the ocean, there can be holes and sandbars created by waves. Rocks and other obstacles will also need to be observed and moved if possible. In lakes, the bottom is often very soft and muddy, which can be difficult to get through. Or the exit may be a boat ramp, which will either be very slippery or extremely rough on your feet. Make a plan of how close to the shore you plan to swim before standing up. Checking the course from the land is also very important. If possible, grab a map and plot where you plan on swimming. Count how many buoys are on the course and what color they are. Are the turn buoys a different color or shape than the intermediate buoys? Which side do you need to go around them? Be sure that you have a good understanding of the course before you get in the water. Once you've taken the time to both evaluate the course and do everything to prepare for a safe swim, you're ready to get started. And now for the advanced open water skills. The reason you probably bought this video. But remember, without mastering the basic body balance, alignment, and general comfort in the water gained in the pool, and also your pre-course preparation, these skills won't do you much good. We're going to cover entries, navigation and sighting, drafting, turning around buoys, exits, and racing strategies. Entries are the one area that usually causes the most fear and anxiety in inexperienced open water swimmers. Understanding where you should line up on the starting line, how to run into the water, and the proper techniques of dolphining out to the deeper water should be understood before a race. As you run into the water, try to keep the feet small and quick. Swing your feet out to the side to get over the water so you don't trip and land on your face. The fastest technique to get to deeper water is a concept called dolphining. This is where you run to waist-deep water and then use the bottom to dolphin off of. The impact zone where the waves break is the real danger zone. So it's worth it to expend a little bit more energy to cover that distance faster. This technique of dolphining can be learned much easier in a pool environment where the conditions are more controlled and you can see what you're doing, and the bottom is a much more known element. Let's watch Jerry Rodriguez dolphining in the pool. Notice how he uses the bottom to push off of, then he tucks his head and dives back down towards the bottom. Look how streamlined his body is each time he jumps off the bottom. The chin is down, the body's in a straight line. If he leaves his head up, it would bring him back to the surface too early or wouldn't allow him to get deep enough. He even uses his hands to pull himself along the bottom. When in the ocean, you can actually dig your fingers into the sand and pull yourself forward. In fact, the water being brought in by waves also has to go back out to sea, and it goes out near the bottom. So if you dive down deep, you can often ride that water out towards the sea under the waves. You want to pay special attention to pushing off the bottom, with the recovery being a sort of butterfly stroke. This technique will definitely get your heart rate up, but it will also help you to get into deeper water faster. We also have footage of Jerry doing it somewhat incorrectly. Notice how when he does it wrong, he leaves his head up too long and his back is straight. When Jerry's dolphining correctly, it takes him much fewer dolphins to get across the pool as when he's doing it incorrectly. When you do it right, you cover a lot of distance without too many dolphins. Now let's watch dolphining in the ocean. It's the same concepts. Run as far as you can, dolphin under waves that are too large to jump over. Keep the momentum going. It's a lot like butterfly. Dolphin off the bottom, plant your feet. Dolphin off the bottom, plant your feet. If you dive too close to the face of the wave, you'll often get pulled up and sometimes back over with the wave. Or if it breaks right in front of you, the wave will hit you because you're not able to get deep enough. So you want to dive under a wave anywhere from 5 to 10 feet before the wave is even to you. Try to keep your momentum moving forward. You never want to stop and just sink under, or the wave's going to be pulling you back. Once you're into deeper water, it is very important to start navigating and sighting. This too is best practiced in a controlled environment before trying it in the ocean. It's best to lift your head and look forward and then turn it to the side for the breath. This allows you to focus on your mark right when you lift your head. If you turn your head to the side first and then swing it forward to look for your mark, it's too much of a moving picture and hard to focus on your sight. It's very easy to lose your orientation in open water. We want to try to breathe without losing the rhythm of our stroke. It may take 2 looks in a row, and then you can go on and swim 10 to 12 or even 20 strokes without looking again. But make sure that you see the object or landmark that you're looking for. Remember, lifting your head will drop your hips. So if you're sighting constantly, you're swimming uphill all the time. Try in a pool to swim with your eyes closed for 6 strokes and then lift and sight. If you can make it across the pool without bumping into the lane lines, try it for 8 strokes. This is helping to teach you to sight and to swim straight. Eventually, you should be able to make it in 10 to 12 strokes without running into the lane line, and as many as 20 to 50 strokes in open water, keeping a straight line. Most people tend to just sight in one method, looking forward. Looking forward for a buoy is certainly an easy way to do it, but it's not always the best, especially if there's any chop. It makes you have to lift your head too much. And when the buoy is only a short distance above the surface of the water, it causes you to look too often. Using landmarks that are much bigger, like a mountain or a lifeguard tower or a building, are much easier marks to shoot for, and you don't have to look as often. Looking behind you can help keep you between 2 points. Using the bottom is helpful when it's a very clear swim. Then you can keep yourself on a straight line without having to look forward or lift your head. And finally, using bubbles to follow the person in front of you, or light rays that come in at an angle, can help keep you on course as well. When the angle of the light changes, you've changed course. So if you're swimming straight, the angle of the light continues to be the same. Drafting and swimming. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Well, actually, it can be either. What really is the purpose of drafting? Well, as in cycling, drafting can save a significant amount of energy while improving speed. Learning to swim close behind others does, however, take skill, awareness, and confidence. And like in cycling, if you're not comfortable being very close to someone else, you're going to expend more energy, not save energy. Banging into the swimmers in front of you or getting continually tapped by a person behind you can create a very frustrating situation. So you want to try to stay as close as possible without hitting the feet of the person ahead. If there are two people swimming side by side, try swimming slightly between them to get pulled along without having to worry about hitting their feet. What's the best position for drafting? You can be straight behind, you can be somewhat to one side, somewhat on their hip, or you can be between people. Personally, I like the position of being slightly to one side, because then if the swimmer in front of you lifts their head to sight, you don't crash into their feet. You can overlap them a little bit without running into them. So try that position with some friends in a pool. You can alternate the leaders every 100 or every 50. You can practice doing it behind or slightly to one side. But learn to be very close without getting nervous about being right on top of somebody. Another reason why I think it's important to be slightly to one side is so that you don't look forward as much. Remember, whenever you're looking forward, you're putting a curve in your back and it's affecting your body position. So try to stay looking at the bottom with a long extended spine line. That way you can extend your arms in front and not worry about hitting anyone if you're off to one side slightly. This is called drafting on the hip. The head of one swimmer is at the hip of the other swimmer, and they're getting pulled along by the water of the lead swimmer. When you first start doing this, it feels a bit scary to be that close to somebody, but gradually you get more comfortable with it. Here's how drafting looks from above in a pool in a single file line. See how the hands are overlapping? There's a big tendency to be smacking the feet of the person in front of you. The problem with that is that you slow down the swimmer in front or frustrate them, and sometimes they'll stop or try to kick you. It is the fastest place to draft, though, to be directly behind the swimmer in front of you. So if they're faster than you, then you'll get pulled along. If you're the same speed, you're going to continue to run into that swimmer. Turning buoys. Going around buoys is another potentially stressful situation for the inexperienced open water swimmer. Everyone seems to want to turn right on the buoy, which often causes swimmers to climb all over each other. Turn close to the buoy if you have the space, but if there's a crowd, try swimming around the buoy a little wider to avoid the piranha in the washing machine effect. Most swimmers have a tendency to look or sight the buoy more frequently as they get closer to it. What you should do is take one good sight to estimate how far away you are from the buoy. If you estimate the buoy is 100 yards away, which would be about 80 strokes, try to take 40 strokes before sighting again and see if you're halfway there. Adjust your course slightly if needed, and then take the remaining 40 strokes. Remember, the more you lift your head, the more your hips drop, the more you slow down. The art of exiting the water is very similar to the art of entering the water. Even though you will have the waves helping to push you to shore, you will also be more fatigued than you were at the beginning of your swim. When exiting, you want to be aware of where the waves are so you can make sure they work to your benefit. Ideally, you will catch a wave to the shore if you're comfortable with body surfing. That's the fastest way to get to shore using the least amount of energy. Point your fingers towards the beach and keep your body stiff like a surfboard, and it'll push you right towards the shore. You may be in conditions that are a bit over your head. Then it is important to make sure that you're aware of where the waves are and to go down deep when the wave breaks so that it doesn't tumble you. Once you reach waist-deep water, you should be able to start dolphining. Continue to dolphin until you reach knee-deep water so that you can jump up and begin to run. Use the same running technique that you used to go into the water, of wide heel recoveries outside the knees so that you can clear the water better as you run out. If you're in conditions that are dangerous with a lot of rocks and uneven bottom surfaces where you're afraid you may cut your foot, then try to beach yourself, which is to swim up as close to the shore practically till your chest hits the bottom and then stand up and exit the water. The beaching method is also good to use in lake conditions where there's a lot of mud that your legs may sink into. Once you stand up and begin to run, remember to take small, quick steps that allow you time to adjust to being in the vertical position again. You need to be aware of using the right amount of energy as you run up the beach. If you stop and walk, you're giving away time. If you're running full tilt sprint, you're going to keep your heart rate too high. So find the right balance for you to keep moving and not give away too much time to others. For any event or competition that you do, you should have a plan and race strategy. Without a plan, you're setting yourself up to be a victim to other people's decisions. Take control of your own race by choosing the line you will take to the first buoy, the effort you will use throughout the swim, and how you plan to navigate the course. Don't rely on other swimmers to do this for you. They often go out too hard, make bad decisions on how to swim to the first buoy, and often use poor navigational skills. If you're an inexperienced swimmer, a good strategy would be to start out wide to the side, enter the water safely in your own space, swim smoothly to the first buoy, and then gradually increase your effort as you go through the swim. Try not to expend too much of your energy just getting to that first buoy. If you start in the middle of the pack, you're likely to get run over, which will increase your anxiety level and potentially put you in some trouble. So you're better off to swim in your own space out to the side, and then when you relax and feel better, consider merging in to draft with others. More experienced swimmers can be more aggressive about their starting position, starting closer to where the first turn buoy is, being aggressive going through the surf so that they're in a good position. If you know some swimmers that are always just a little bit better than you, consider marking them and staying close to them throughout the swim as kind of your navigational leader. If they always finish ahead of you, chances are you'll have a better swim if you stick to them. And finally, the direction of the current can also affect your strategy. If the current will be going against you at the beginning part of the race, then you're going to want to conserve some energy, but still keep aggressive to get to that turnaround to ride with the current on the way back. If the current is with you, remember not to work too hard in the first half of the swim because you're going to have to fight against the current on the way home. We hope this video has helped give you the tools and skills to help you become much more comfortable and faster in open water swimming. Good luck in your racing.
As far as wetsuits go, if the water temperature is below 78 degrees Fahrenheit and you're an age grouper, you're allowed to wear one. The elites have to wait until the water temperature drops below 70. And if you are allowed to wear a wetsuit, it's definitely to your advantage to do so.
Right, one of the best advancements in the technology is that of the wetsuit. Originally it was used just to keep people warm in cold water. Now it still does that, but it's also, with its technological innovations, become very, very fast and turned into a speed suit. Now, some of the things you want to consider when you're putting on your wetsuit is, one, you want to try to put it on when you're still dry. That way it's not sticky and it's harder to put on your wetsuit. Another thing you want to do is make sure that you're pulling up on the legs so that you have some slack for your upper body, so that when you put the wetsuit on your upper body, it's not too restrictive.
You know, Wes, I like to use cooking spray and spray it strategically on different parts of my body where the wetsuit can get stuck when I'm trying to take it off. I spray it around my ankles. Because I'm a woman, I have hips. I put it on my hips, elbows, around my wrists, and then lastly, I'll put it around my neck so that I don't get any chafing.
Right, and another thing to consider is when you have a friend that might help you put on the wetsuit, is you want to know how it gets strapped so that when you come out of the water, you know to pull left, right, and then zip down. One time in Europe, I was doing a race and I got panicky and I forgot how to undo my wetsuit. I had to rip the rubber off to get my wetsuit off.
I knew you were strong, but I didn't know you were that strong.
Yeah, and another thing about the cooking spray is I like to put it on my legs also because it's easier to get the wetsuit off when you're taking it off.
And also, if someone's trying to grab your foot in the swim, they might just kind of slip off
It's happened before. It's definitely happened before. I like to use long sleeve wetsuits now. I've used sleeveless in the past, but for the past 5 or 6 years, I've gone to long sleeves wetsuits because I think no matter what the temperature is, it's still the fastest thing out there, is to have that extra flotation in the arms.
Oh, definitely. My first year as a pro, I had a sleeveless wetsuit. The day before the race, the water temperature was 78 degrees. Overnight, the lake turned, and on race day, the water temperature was 48 degrees. In that sleeveless wetsuit, it was miserable.
And another thing to consider is you still have the flexibility with long sleeve wetsuits to have your full range of motion for your stroke.
Absolutely. Yeah, Wes, I like to line up either on the far left or the far right, definitely not in the middle. Even though it's a little longer distance from lining up on the outside to the first buoy, if I can get good clean water, not get hit around, be able to find my stroke, I can get to that first buoy faster than if I did line up in the middle.
Now Barb, you're exceptional because you're going to be the leader out of the water. For me, I need to get behind someone who's faster than I am. Ideally, I want to get behind someone who swims 30% faster than I do in the pool. In doing so, I can follow his bubbles. So what I like to do is stand next to him at the start line, find out what his race number is, what his swimsuit looks like, what his feet look like, so that if I lose him at the swim start, I can catch him maybe 300-400 meters down and try to let him pull me through the swim.
For those newcomers out there who aren't very comfortable in the water, I would definitely suggest when the gun goes off, letting everybody go. Give them 10 or 15 seconds head start. You'll get all those people out of the way who are being really aggressive and wanting to beat you up. You'll have nice clean water so you can find your stroke, and you'll definitely save energy for later in the race. You'll get those 10 or 15 seconds back.
Right, a lot of new triathletes and people who aren't used to swimming have this anxiety going into the race of the fear of getting hit or kicked, in the face, which could happen. So if you do start after the group goes and give them 10 seconds, that'd be great. Another thing to do is start maybe on the ends where it's not as crowded.
My name's Todd Hetty. I'm the champion of the Americas in ultra triathlon, which basically means that I'm one of the few people crazy enough to go out and do double Ironman distance races. Been in the sport for a long time. I guess I did my first triathlon back in 1982 here in Shelbyville, Kentucky. Brand new sport, the Ironman in Hawaii had only been going on for a few years. And I think there was probably 20 of us that did it that first year here. Now there's up to a couple of hundred that do that race. And that's kind of my new involvement in triathlon. I was out of it from about the late 80s up until the mid 90s. Was doing ultra marathon runs and those type things, but had gotten away from the triathlons during college. And the parks came to me and said, we're getting ready to discontinue this triathlon because nobody, wants to run it. So I agreed to take over as race director, and that went on. You had everything set up. And the race day, my wife came out, she volunteered, watched how much fun everybody was having, said, we've got to do this. So we went out, got her a bike that day, got into the swimming, riding again, And it was about 3 months later when I did my first Ironman race, and she did a half Ironman. So did those type activities for a couple of years, and then decided, you know, next step up, of course, is an ultra distance triathlon. Natural progression for an ultramarathon runner, I guess. So planned it and trained specifically for the event for about 6 to 8 months. Went up, did it. Wonderful group of people that do these kind of things. People from Switzerland and Austria, Australia, England, all over the world compete in them. So I had a lot of good times, met a lot of neat people, and was fortunate enough to come out and win it. Everybody who's starting out is saying, well, you know, I don't have time for this and I don't have time for that. But I think most people, once they get into the sport, find that they manage their time better the more they're doing because they enjoy it so much, they find time for it. You'll work out and, you know, you might swim in the morning before you go to work, do a little more at lunch. With my thing, I do some coaching and training, and I'm a race director. So, you know, I have a real flexible schedule that allows me to work a lot of training in around my schedule. Or, you know, when crunch time comes, work my schedule around in my training. So, but I think it's something, most people, if they're really enjoying the sport, they find a way to do the training. My training is basically, you know, when I'm training, of course, for a shorter distance, you know, a lot of conventional interval work and those type things. But when training for the double Ironman, what I did was just a lot of distance. Did some speed work sessions, basically incorporated those with other people that I'm training and those type things. But every Wednesday was pretty much a consistent day for me. I would get up and I would do a half Ironman on my own, of course, every Wednesday. I would swim about 1.5 miles normally, go out and ride a bike around 60 miles, and then finish the day with, you know, 13, 15-mile run. And then a lot of times on the weekends, we'd go out, I'd do a 30-mile run one day and maybe a 100 to 120-mile bike the next day. There's an organization, the International Ultra Triathlon Association, that is a sponsor for it, or is the governing body for it. It's a World Cup Series event, but the sponsors, the whole organization, the town was right outside Quebec City in Canada. You know, there was actually an Ironman that went on at the same time, and they had over 300 volunteers, so there were more volunteers out there than there were participants. It was just an incredible experience. We had, on the swim itself, we actually had a dedicated kayaker that went out with each person doing the double Ironman, you know, just in case we did run into some problems. And of course you have to have somebody feeding you and giving you something to drink out there. You don't go over 2 hours without, you know, something during the race. We were swimming, there were actual cruise ships going down the river as we were swimming. And one of the amazing things is we swam by a refinery. And so there was these oil tankers there docked, and you're swimming, you know, 15, 20 feet from the side of an oil tanker. And it's a pretty intimidating sight. A lot of people that they don't have the opportunity to train in open water, or, you know, just don't get out there for some reason because they don't have anybody else to train with, which is a lot of problems. Because you really don't want to go out and jump in a lake, you know, if you're not used to it, and swim out there by yourself in case you do have a problem. But I think a lot of the people are intimidated by open water just because they're not confident in it. And I think it's not a lot different than if you're in a pool and you see, you know, somebody that's just learned how to swim. They say, well, I can swim, but I can't go in the deep end. You know, it's no different swimming in the deep end and the shallow end. It's just that confidence thing. And a lot of that carries over into the races we do. I've seen people who, you know, swim in a pool and everything, really good swimmer, come out and hit open water the first time, and they panic because they can't see their hand in front of their face. So a boat pulls them out. A real common thing is people get in, they'll go out and pay a couple $100, get a new wetsuit, and as soon as they jump in the open water, it's too tight, it's choking them. And it's all that confidence, and you've just got to learn when you do the races to relax. You know what you can do, you know what you're capable of, and you just have to be confident and comfortable. The biggest difference probably between the short distance races and the long distance races is, like you said, in the long distance races, it is a lot more relaxed. You know, you're not at that mass at the start line. You know, everybody's not thinking they've got 500 yards to swim, they've got 5 miles to swim. So, you know, it is a lot more relaxed at that point. But then you've got the intimidation of, you know, currents out there, a lot of boat traffic, and just the distance itself. So everything has its, you know, pluses and negatives in it. I think that next year I'll probably do the one in Canada again, and I'd like to do a couple more. There's a triple Ironman in Virginia, and there's some scattered around in Europe also. There's 6 races in the World Cup Series. But to do them all, you either have to be pretty independently wealthy or have some good sponsorship. But I guess the ultimate goal in the ultra triathlon is in Mexico. They have a Deca Ironman, which is 10 times the Ironman distance. And so I'm shooting for that in a couple of years. Once I got started, you know, doing the races, and like I said, had pretty good notoriety around here because, especially in Kentucky, there's not a lot of people doing ultra marathons and ultra triathlons. So a lot of people start coming to me and asking me questions. And so got into coaching and training at that point. Certified triathlon coach, also personal trainer, and the fitness director here at the local park. So, you know, I work with a lot of athletes and, you know, always looking for more to work with, trying to help people reach their goals. And, you know, even if somebody wants to do something as crazy as the stuff I do, we'll get them there.